Welcome to Home Health 360, a podcast presented by AlayaCare. I'm your host, Jeff Howell, and this is the show about learning from the best in home health care from around the globe. Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of Home Health 360, where we speak with leaders in home care and home health from across the globe. Today we have Craig Gear, who is the CEO of Older Persons Advocacy Network. OPAN is a national network comprised of 9 states and territory organizations that have delivered information, education, and individual advocacy services to older people throughout Australia. In 2020 and 2021, OPAN provided individual advocacy for over 23,000 seniors, completing 2,600 education sessions, and get this, had more than 73,000 webinar views. Craig, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yes, COVID definitely made us pivot. There's that wonderful word of pivoting to when you can't get to a residential aged care facility or you can't go out to the community to provide face-to-face education. What do? You go to online. And so that was a great opportunity for us to make something out of what a really bad situation was.
Yeah, and I suspect those weren't 73,000 live webinars. I'm sure you had some automation built into that, right?
Yeah. So there were views of people viewing the webinar series across the time. So, yeah.
So you're funded by the Australian government's National Aged Care Advocacy Program, and you're founded in 2017. So what's really the purpose behind what OPAN really does?
Yes, as you mentioned that we've got 9 member organisations. They've been delivering this program, which the government funds, but is independent of government, independent of the aged care providers, because it's really important older people know that we're on their side. We do class ourselves as partisan because we want to represent and support the older person themselves, because they're often the person whose human rights are kind of impeded, or there's a power differential when you've got a provider providing care and then someone who's the recipient of care. And so what we're doing is balancing that power dynamic, helping people to be able to raise their issues and get the best out of their aged care experience. Often we don't know that we think we're doing the right thing and we think we're providing really great care and no one's provided us feedback, so everything must be all right. What our aged care advocates do, and we've got about 200 now across the country, is actually go and speak to the older person themselves and let them say, look, I'm not really confident in raising this, or I just don't want to make a fuss, but I'm not really happy with what's going on. And so we often work with the provider and say, let's find a solution that works for the older person. So we're on the older person's side. We take direction from them. We're free, confidential and independent. What OPAN does is bring those 9 organisations that have been doing this for about 30 years, has brought them together under a national umbrella, so we can make sure there's consistent practice, but also that we can promote the value of aged care advocacy right across the country.
Got it. And so I would imagine one example would be helping families to figure out if home care is for them or residential care.
Absolutely. So it's giving people about options, about understanding how to navigate the aged care system, what is available and out there, and what is the benefit. We work with a thing called the Charter of Aged Care Rights, which is 14 statements about what older people can expect from their aged care provider and how they expect to be treated. So things like being treated with dignity and respect, to be able to live free of abuse and neglect. And the one that people always come to us when we speak to older people about the Charter is right number 9, I have the right to my independence. And so home care is what people are telling us they want. They want to be having delivered. They want to stay in the home as long as possible. They want their family around them. They want to be connected to their community. They want a village type approach to this. And so getting people to understand what good home care is like and how they can navigate that, how they might be able to self-manage or how they actually get the rostering right so that they're getting the care and support they need. That's what people are telling us that they want, and that's what some of our aged care advocates will do. And then when people are in the services, if issues do arise, which they will from time to time, how do you get those issues resolved? How do you navigate and coordinate and negotiate with your aged care provider as well?
So these 200 advocates that you have, that they've had careers within home care and residential care? How do you find these people, and what are their qualifications?
Yeah, it's a really interesting mix. We've just taken on a new intake into what we call is our Advocacy Academy, which teaches everyone all things aged care, but teaches them how do you actually deliver this advocacy program in a way that is framed in human rights, upholds the human rights of older people, but also doesn't take over from older people, to maintain their independence, so that we're actually looking for them to be given the skills and empowerment to advocate for themselves. That would be the ultimate joy of mine if older people felt that they didn't need us anymore, that we'd given them the skills and that sort of thing. So these advocates, some have come out of teaching, some have come out of healthcare, the care services. And a lot of people have come from aged care providers themselves and gone, I want to actually be on the side of the older person and make sure that the things I've seen that might not go so well, I can actually do something about that. And I want to champion the older person's rights.
And how would your clients typically find you?
Yeah, so that is interesting, because we think we see about 2% of older people per year. And we at least want to get to a minimum of 5%. We really would be wonderful if we were seeing and supporting 7 to 10% of older Australians receiving aged care, which is around about 1.4 million. So we've got a way to go. We've got to work with our partners, such as home care providers, some really good providers who give the Charter of Aged Care Rights to the recipient, the older person, say, here, this is the way we're going to treat you. You can hold us to account on this. And here's OPAN's number, 1-800-700-600, down the bottom there. You can ring them anytime. So that's where it works really well, and getting it into information. We do a lot on social media. So there is a lot of older people who are digitally savvy to some level on Facebook. And definitely over COVID, a lot more people got on there. So we do a lot on social media. We also go into print, into what's called the senior newspaper in Australia. But we need to do more. We need more. We want 20-30% of people to know that we're here and available and free, and they should give us a call. So providers are fantastic partners in when they do that. And it shows that they're really open to taking feedback and hearing these things. It's not about bashing up the providers. It's about making sure that they know what's going on and what we can help them to provide really good care.
And how would you describe, what are the different types of home care in Australia?
Yeah, so there are 4 types, which makes it quite confusing for people. There's the Commonwealth Home Support Program. That's sort of low-key supports just to help around the house, but there is a little bit of access to some medication management and things like that, monitoring in that as well. There are home care packages which have 4 levels at the moment, and they're a bucket of money that is directed by the client about how the care and support will come into them and support them. There's short-term restorative care or transition care, and that's often when people have gone into hospital or they've deteriorated and they need some rehabilitation services, physio, OTs, those sorts of things, exercise physiologist, to come in for a period of week to get them back on their feet and stay in their home. And then the final bit is flexible care, which is a program which is around there for First Nations people to say, look, there is a different way that we want to provide culturally safe home care services, and we need to be more flexible in how we do that. So those 4 programs available. The bulk of people, it's around about 800,000 older Australians receive the Commonwealth Home Support Program, and there's probably getting closer to 200,000 in receiving a home care package now as well. So it's much bigger than residential aged care, where we see about 180,000 people in residential aged care. There is a lot of people receiving home care, and the more they can do it, the more they can receive and get those allied health services in as well, the more they can maintain their independence and stay at home longer.
Okay, so interesting. So under Commonwealth and the home care packages, there's about 1 million people right there, and then Resi is about 180,000 in total.
Yeah. So it's much more cost effective and much happier customers if they can stay in their home longer. And have really good coordinated care there. But as you can see, that's a bit confusing of a system, and for people to understand, one of the things that's happening after we had a Royal Commission is looking at an integrated system of home care called supported home. And so that's being designed at the moment that bring those programs together, which is much more, doesn't matter which program you got, we've got to look at your needs and we've got to make sure you get the care you need with the right staff, with the right attitudes at the right time in the right place, which people say is in their home.
Right. Has the self-directed care really taken off? I think that's the term for it. That's where instead of getting a prescribed level of care, the government will provide a check and then the client can actually decide how those funds are allocated.
Yeah, we've got a program called the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and that does a lot more probably of self-directed care, client-directed care, consumer-directed care, as various terms for it. In home care packages, yes, it's built on a model of consumer-directed care and also the ability to have a choice and control about whether you want a case manager that is going to coordinate and check in with you and make sure that the effectiveness of your care, or other people who say, I want to manage this myself. I've actually managed my bills, my invoices, run a house, run a business my whole life. Why do I have to have someone else come in and take over from me now? So I want the ability to, yes, with appropriate checks and balances, so make sure it is taxpayers' money that is being spent on the right things, appropriate inclusions and exclusions. But I want to actually manage that package myself, and I want to determine how care is provided to me. And that's where it's really important just to have the software, the back end, the business sort of supports that allow providers to come in and coordinate that sort of support for someone that's with a case manager, but also importantly with someone that's self-managing their home care package as well. And one of the things we're seeing at the moment is rostering is so important. Workforce is really important, and being able to coordinate and schedule that appropriately so that it meets the needs of what the older person is asking. I might need 15 minutes in the morning to get me up, and then I have my shower at the end of the day and I need someone to come back to do that. And it takes a lot of careful planning and rostering so the person can say, and I want the person of my choice who I like to be doing that. So there needs to be systems and business processes behind that actually support that person having choice and control and maintaining that independence.
Got it. And then within those four original buckets you had talked about, I can see how there's a level of complexity, because I think you even said that within home care packages, there's 4 different levels. Curious if you look at the United States as an example, it's rather straightforward in that they have Medicaid for families that are at the poverty line, and they have Medicare, which is essentially you've paid into it your whole career, and now it's your essentially retirement healthcare fund.
Yes.
I'm curious, is there a level of, is there anything comparative to that within, if there's 800,000 people in the Commonwealth home support program? I'm also curious if there's degrees of income or what you've paid into, and when you're 65 and above, is there the equivalent?
It's a really interesting discussion we're having at the moment around co-contributions and how do you build a sustainable supported home program. And the government hasn't made a decision on that as yet. Under the current systems, there are some levels of co-contributions, and depending on which package you're on and those sorts of things. OPAN's position is that no one should be pushed into poverty to be able to receive care, and people need the care and support that they need. But there are times when people can afford to contribute to that care as well. So there needs to be more than just a safety net. It needs to be that it actually is doing what it does and supports people to stay in their home. But there is a significant amount, billions of dollars that go into home care and Commonwealth home support each year of taxpayers' money. And that's the right thing. That's the thing we need to do for our older citizens, old Australians. They have paid taxes their whole life. We've got the responsibility to provide the care and support they need into their old age.
What are families most surprised about to find out about home care and residential care when the time comes for them to take a look at what their options are?
Yeah, I think probably the complexity of the system at the moment. It is still challenging to navigate. There's been a lot of improvement in the program. We've got an online website and call centre called My Aged Care. But there are a number of steps that people need to go through, and they're also surprised that often they have to wait. So a lot of the stuff we're doing at the moment, the Australian government's doing, is around reforming and making the program simpler. But they are surprised at what it also can do to actually keep someone in their home longer if it's coordinated well and they work with the older person to direct their care. So it's probably the system navigation that's probably people find the most challenging at the beginning, and then when it's established that some of the difference it actually can make in someone's life, that they can still stay connected to their community, they can receive supports. We just want to see that those supports are based on need rather than just a capped out package of money.
In the United States, there's something like 25,000 home care agencies. There's a pretty low bar to get into at least the private pay side of the business. Should I assume that the Australian market is an equally fragmented home care provider market as well?
It's fragmented in the sense that there's a lot of providers, but look, I don't think finding a provider, the My Aged Care system does allow you to sort of put in your postcode, your needs, and those sorts of things. It can be improved, of course, but there has been a lot of work for people to be able to look at that. The quality standards, the aged care quality standards also apply to both residential and home care providers. So there's a lot of work going on around making sure that the quality systems are in place, that you get a good quality of care, that providers are investing in their staff, that they are providing the appropriate training and checks and balances. We're about to have a code of conduct that comes in that sets that sort of bar of expectations on how a worker will behave. So it's improving regulation, and we're trying to get that balance right so it doesn't knock people out of the market who are really good providers, but also provides an appropriate set of standards and expectations on providers of how they'll provide care and the quality of that care.
There's a little thing called caregiver shortages. Not sure if you've heard of it or not.
Oh, just a little bit, yes. Yeah.
We were not going to not talk about that. I'm curious what the situation might be like in Australia and if you've seen any changes over time.
I think, and COVID has exacerbated the workforce issues with people either leaving the workforce or finding it a challenging place to work. That's in home care and particularly residential aged care. Everyone is having workforce challenges. We've also got expansion in our disability care sector, in our veterans care sector, and then also in the home care and residential aged care sector. And everyone's what's called fishing from the same pond sort of thing. So that is a challenge. We're looking at training up our own. We're looking at migration options that the government is looking at as well. But we need the right staff with the right training in the right place. And home care, I think, has got great opportunities for people because you have got that flexibility. It is a different type of care. We have some models which are around more sole provider sort of thing, with someone setting up their own business and working with it under the banner of a provider, but having that independence and support. So there's real advantages to working in the sector. But unfortunately, there's no magic wand of suddenly giving this instant workforce. But I think it is the workforce of the future. The care sector needs to be there. And one of the things we really need to do is actually pay and value the workforce. If we don't do that, no one will want to come and work in aged care or disability care or the care sectors. And so what's called our Fair Work Commission is actually looking at a wage case at the moment to really look at upping the wages of what is just such a vital workforce and the value that older people get, but also of workers when they say they've got that personal connection, and this is about relationship-based care that they're delivering, and it's joyous when they do it, but they need to be valued and respected and need to understand that value of that work as well.
And is it typical then that a care worker in Australia would make minimum wage and it's fee for service? There's no government subsidization?
Yeah. Unfortunately, some people get more money in Starbucks than they do at working in aged care, and that's why our industrial associations have put the case, and our aged care providers have supported it. And now with the Labor government, the Albanese government that's just come in, are supporting the wage case as well. So everyone's on the same page of saying they have to be paid more. The unions have said 25% more. And that's what the Commission is looking at the moment, what that increase. But it's rare that you get government providers consumer groups and the unions all on the same page saying we need to do this. So that's a positive, that we all want the same thing, even if it's there's discussions about what that increase is. But the community's calling for it. Older people are calling for it. We need to just get on and do it.
Yeah, and the demographics are undeniable, and you combine that with 99.9% of people want to age at home.
Yes.
Those are forces that are just undeniable. So COVID hits. I'm presuming that you would have seen a big spike in activity on people that are looking to become educated on home care. And I'm assuming the 73,000 webinar views is a 2-year high. And in the previous 2 years, it was nowhere near that.
Correct. Yeah.
Just curious to some of the changes that you've seen, because I'm just imagining that, the 200 advocates that you have, maybe that's been you've gone through a huge hiring spree, and, as people are trying to pull people out of residential care and a spotlight is shining on home care. Curious to hear from you all the changes since COVID has started.
Yeah, so one of the biggest changes, as I said before, so one of the things about how do people come to us? Well, we also go out in the community, and our advocates are out there in aged care homes or wherever we can find where older people are, which is sometimes harder in home care, but because we can go to the long-term care facility or the aged care home and say, hey, we're going to tell you about your rights and about the availability of these services. Harder to do that in the community, harder to do that during a lockdown. So one of the things, I was sitting there with a colleague at the pub just before the lockdown started in Australia and said, this is going to really affect older people. What are we going to do to get messages out? How are we going to help communicate to older people? And so the webinars were a strategy of ours. It's something we'd done small scale before, but we knew that people would be then sitting at their home wanting accurate information they could be confident in, but it was not just government speak, it was translated into the way they heard it, but it was also older people speaking to them. So that was a strong focus. We saw huge demand for our services, particularly in residential aged care facilities where there was restrictions on visitors. There was huge impacts on and loss of life. People were worried. People in home care didn't want to let their home care provider or their home care worker in case they transmitted. So what is appropriate PPE? What was the appropriate thing to ask your aged care worker to do? How did we actually keep services coming to you? Don't lock your services out because that will mean you'll deteriorate. How do we actually make sure you've got food and support that you need? And that was a real partnership with home care providers to make sure that those systems were working, but with local governments and state and territory governments as well. So it's had a big impact of getting the right information to people to actually for them to ask their questions so that it wasn't just one-way information. And that's been a big growth for us over COVID, but it's actually meant that people understand the value of aged care advocacy and why it's important to access an aged care advocate and get information that you need.
And I love that you guys are independent of the providers as well, and you're not a referral source, right? And so you can truly be this independent, unbiased third party.
Very strict on that as well. And while we take government money, and that's sometimes people criticise us, why you're paid for the government, so you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. The other option is older people have to pay for these services, and they shouldn't have to pay. You should be able to have independent supports that are free. And so that's why there's the money. But we still, because we hear from about now 27,000 people each year, we hear about what their issues are, and we can take those issues up collectively to government and say, the system's not working in these areas. We need to keep working on reform in these areas. So that's the power, I suppose, of the network of having OPAN together and hearing from the voices of older people every day about the issues and the life experience that they're having. And that'll drive an improved system over time.
Yeah. And you have an elder abuse program as well. How does that work?
Yeah, so often we come in contact people, or providers come in contact with older people and say, something's not quite right here. I'm not sure what's going on. I don't know what I should do. And so part of that for support providers, but also ultimately support the older people to have their voice. And if someone notices something, we want them to say something, and we want them to bring in an advocate who can have a discussion with the older person about what might be going on, the trigger factors, how do you prevent abuse, where it is abuse, to get them the information about options, but then still staying in control of that discussion, because we know sometimes it's about family dynamics and relationships, it's about financial systems, but also it's about the person feeling disempowered, or that they've had to check in their human rights to make choices and control in their lives at the door when they're starting to receive aged care services. And that shouldn't be the case. So that's a lot of the work, is education, but also allowing people to know what supports are out there and how to prevent abuse, and the sorts of scaffolding that you can build around someone so they're still connected to their community, which is a mitigating factor for abuse.
Yeah. Tell me about the award-winning documentary that you have, and I believe you can get access to it from your website as well. If that's the case, please provide the URL and how people can go take a look at it.
So I can't claim wanting to be the award winner on this one, but our public broadcaster, which is called the ABC in Australia, and two programs we've been involved with. This one was the Old People's Home for 4-year-olds, where they did some intergenerational work and brought young people in as sort of these mini trainers for older people into both residential, but then the second series looking at them working with older people living in the community and receiving home care. And it was really about people staying connected with their community. It did win as Shirley McLaren, who was one of the participants, keeps telling me that she's now an international Emmy Award winning person from this series. The other work that we've been doing is with a group called, with Jason and his family, a beautiful experience of home care and someone supporting someone living with dementia. It's called Everybody's Omar, and it's actually out in cinemas or online, and we can send you through the links to both of those programs. But Everybody's Omar talks about this family's journey with dementia, and how that can be challenging, but it can also be absolutely joyous, and it's up for a number of awards and programs at the moment. I really encourage people, anyone working in home care, anyone working with older people, to see the reality, but also the joy that Omar brings when you see that smile on her face and that interaction she has with such a tight family unit. And it was only possible because of the home care supports that they got, and the wonderful providers that actually worked with them as a family so that they could stay at home with Omar as long as possible.
That's great. And what's your website? Is it opan.au?
opan.org.au, opan.org.au. And anyone listening in Australia that wants to refer someone, there's a free call number, 1-800-700-600, that gets through to our aged care advocacy services.
1-800-700-600.
876. Yep.
Oh, 876. Well, Craig, we're bumping up against our time here, so I'll get you out of here on this last question. Give us a reason to be optimistic about the future of care and the place that the client calls home.
I think it's because of the wonderful aged care workers, providers, and families. Everyone wants the same thing. Everyone wants the human rights of older people to be respected, to be upheld, to be understood, and to deliver really great care. And so if we're all working towards the same thing, and then we can sort of start bringing in people behind us into this sector, I think that brings a wonderful opportunity to deliver great care that really respects and provides dignity to older people.
And it's heartwarming to hear that you have 200 advocates that no matter who I speak with on this podcast, we as humans want to be in denial about the need to have any type of care for as long as possible. And, when you go through the 4 different types of care Australia has, and the HC packages even have 4 subcategories, it's definitely confusing. It's overwhelming, and people leave these things to the last minute. And so it's great to hear you guys are doing such great work in providing truly independent, unbiased advice to deliver, consulting to people that, are in need and they don't know what to do next. And love to see that you're not a referral source. You're truly an impartial party to really help them out.
Absolutely. Love the work we do. We'd love to not have to do it. It'd be great.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being on the show, Craig. I've learned a lot today. I've taken a few pages of notes here that I always keep from my archive, and look forward to maybe having you on the show another time in the future, or if I ever make it to Australia for a home care conference, I'll be sure to look you up.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Home Health 360 is presented by AlayaCare. First off, I want to thank our amazing guests and listeners. To get more episodes, you can go to alayacare.com/Home Health 360. That's spelled Home Health 360, or search Home Health 360 on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. The easiest way to stay up to date on our new shows is to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. We also have a newsletter you can sign up for on alayacare.com/Home Health 360 to get alerts for new shows and more valuable content from AlayaCare right into your inbox. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.